Hello everyone, my name is Lesejo, also known as Chee, and today we're going to be breaking down the Vernacular content bank brought to you by Kilohearts and yours truly. Before I begin, I first want to give a massive shout out to the crew out in Sweden for giving me this opportunity to make this bank. I've been a massive fan of their tools, I think since like 2017, 2018 maybe. My first ever encounter with a semi-modular synthesizer was probably Bengal by Max for Cats, and that got smeared all over Read Once Then Destroy until I found this stuff, which I'm pretty sure either Matzo or Kill the Noise kind of introduced me to, and yeah, it is mental. And so I want to approach these two videos in a way where I can showcase every single, preset that comes with this bank, further explaining its workflow for people that are somewhat beginners or even, experts. It doesn't really matter what tools you use. It's really just how you use them. And here we're pretty much going to see just that. These presets range from loops to one-shots to straight up emulations of effects that I love and cannot afford. So yeah, yeah, we're about to get into it. This is going to be broken down into two parts. The first one is going to be just overview of the entire bank, the layout of the ecosystem, how it works, how we can sort of hack its signal flow, breaking down the demo preset, or the demo song at least, and some notable presets you might be familiar with. A little cameo action. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, so first things first. What is phase plant? Well, as we can see here, phase plant is essentially a semi-modular synthesizer. It is compiled of three major sections, which is the generators, the effects, and the modulators. I'm gonna kind of give you a quick overview. I imagine if you're even watching this video, you kind of have an idea of synthesis, but I'm gonna do it anyways. We're gonna start with the basics, which is the top bar. You got your preset browser right here. You scroll through your presets down here. Your favorite presets, I guess, and you can go check them out there. A lot of them are missing. Add your description, all of that. Save, new, undo, redo, and Space Invaders. Or yeah, in case you didn't have enough reason to procrastinate on very important projects, it would be cool to have Tetris on here. But anyways, right underneath that you have all your macros, which are 8. If you notice in a lot of doors and also hardware, the standard is usually 8 because I think it just encourages having the bare minimum that does the absolute most, especially when you are writing or at least just kind of performing. Encourages you to not look at the screen as much. So especially for a plugin like Faceplant, it's very important because these patches can get really complicated really quickly. Too many parameters. Some doors just cannot handle having all of those. So that's why doors like Ableton have the configure button, so you can press exactly which ones you want, but you want to stick to 8. Now, coming here on the generators, this is essentially where your sounds are created, and that is, you get your analog, granular, noise, sampler, wavetable, alongside some effects, routing, outputs, groups. I would love to just unpack that, but that's a video for another time. Then over here we have your effects, and you have 3 lanes. Now, by default, lane 1 goes into lane 2, which goes into lane 3, which goes out to the master. preferably, I usually just send all of them straight to the master, because most of the time, whatever patches I make usually compiled with different sounds, and I would prefer them not be processed together, or and the one thing that I was mentioning about making full songs, you'll see what I mean. This comes in handy in the future. And then finally you have your modulators. This is kind of like somewhat I feel like the gears that kind of make faceplant, considering that it's a semi-modular synthesizer, this would be redundant without this bottom section. And of course here you got your global knobs, got your glide, unison, polyphony, legato, master pitch, all that, and then your keyboard and the gain right here, and then you can change the size. Obviously I have a different skin, and if you go on the Discord you can kind of check them out. Now let's actually get into the bank itself, the Vernacular bank. You're going to be met with this face, which is also on the recording. It's kind of a little self-portrait I end up doing in Procreate. And there's 4 categories: basses, drums, effects, and instruments. And with all these, there are some that are full-on loops that I would show you now, but got that reserved for the second video. But over here, actually, I have some sounds, specifically some notable sounds that you guys might be familiar with. Now, we're going to start with the very first one, and that is Bloodthirsty. You guys might recognize this from the 1/4" EP. And that is all just in one single patch. Now, as you can see here, this is a pretty simple patch. Generally, whenever I make any sounds, really, I like to keep the generators pretty simple. Honestly, this is across the board with any synth that I work with. It just makes it a lot easier to sculpt, because you can add a lot more. Preferably, I mean, this is kind of rare to even use a complicated wavetable. I can generally get a lot more mileage out of using the basic waveforms, but here, we just kind of, and got the mod wheel that's doing the absolute most, but here you got your wavetable character, crunch, yeah, and that's kind of the Bloodthirsty sound. Honestly, if you've seen the D-Fire the course, I kind of did a whole rundown of the whole project, and it's really just this sound. But yeah, up next is the Submotion. This is my personal favorite. I've always kind of had trouble finding the perfect sub, and this is actually in reference to Minimal Audio Currents sub engine. Big shout out to Jake Penn and the whole crew at Minimal, honestly. So what I actually kind of took inspiration from was how the partials were done. So the sub engine in Current is comprised of 8 partials, or at least all the harmonics that make up somewhat nice little sub, really. And if you see here, there's 2 wavetables, one being the actual fundamental and one being the harmonics without the fundamental. The reason for that is so that we can actually add some modulation to the subharmonics, and even more so, add some stereo and some detuning, so we're not actually messing with the mono sub, and that way we can almost create this illusion of a larger sub, and you don't really need much on top of this. To be honest, you can process this alone and you can come up with quite a lot. So whoops. So as you can hear. That sub honestly just reminds me of Mephius Far Too Close. Is it Far Too Close? That was the first time I ever heard that kind of sub, and I was like, I need to know how to make that. It's this classic roller. But yeah, here as you can see in the unison, I have kind of set it to 2, and the detune is sent there up to the macro and the spread, and here we have the harmonic envelope. So what I did here was basically I have some motion to the actual harmonics alone and not the sub itself. So, you can get some interesting movement and womps, so to speak. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I use the sub on basically everything. Yeah, and then right here we have the Reese's Puffs, which is just a simple sort of respace. Now, as you can see here, we literally only have one Reese, and if you check this out, in the unison, I basically just have this set to 2 voices, and the Reese detune, and this kind of just, yeah, it's with the spread all the way down. You don't really need another oscillator. This is something I saw on I think it was SleepNet Patreon, and I thought that was really smart. I never really thought about that, but it's kind of straightforward. But yeah, if you guys have not checked out Vision Patreon, check it out. Some of the greatest to ever do it, and you can't really see, this is a new studio, but my entire house is covered in Noisia stickers and inspected. So yeah. Now, our next notable patch is the Spangled bass, and this is all done literally in one patch. Oh, that's not right. Excuse me. I'm gonna just... So, yeah. And that's compiled of 2 different or 3 different groups. Have the actual oscillator that's doing some FM, and you can't really hear this one because it is off of the envelope. If you don't want to, if you want to sort of do some FM without necessarily hearing what it's being FM from, you want to make sure that it's off of the output, because if it's before, you get this. So I would much rather hear it without. And then, of course, we have the sub here on top, and to sprinkle it, got that right there. Yeah, and quick tip, if you want to sort of get familiar with Faceplant, if you think the blank canvas is a little scary, you should create some templates. I have done that with quite a lot of synths that I used to use in here, and some for some friends of mine. Like this is essentially from a template I built, kind of replicating Serum's signal flow, and I mean you can kind of just see it, or just use your ears, and yeah, like with Serum there's 2 oscillators, and if you FM from B but then you turn the level down, then it's basically like putting a wavetable or an oscillator after the output. So and then obviously there's the sub engine, and then there's the noise. So yeah, and you got some post-processing here. Yeah, and there's another copy of this which you probably thought was a sample, but oh, excuse me. Yeah, right here, the same bass except just a little more freaky. Oh yeah, that's sick, right? Yeah. And I actually was able to drag the spangled bass pattern from the original track. Obviously, it's a lot more dusty here, but if you hear it, all of these are just compiled of. So, the only thing off of them is just the saturator. Oh, let's see what else is here. And then that sub, what is that? Just a regular, yeah. So yeah, those are some notable patches. And then some of my selects. Well, first, the Vulture's guitar that you hear in the intro is also face blonde. Right there. So this patch was made, Vultures was made like in 2019. That was way before the new granular generator was created. So kind of just had to go old school. It's really like, this is a process I learned via Cursor with the Ableton sampler, where you could basically like loop one single area, and then if you go to the auxiliary of the sample, you can kind of set the loop start and loop length to the additional it's like the extra mods that aren't the quick drop quick menu automation. So yeah, and then here, as you can see, the LFO is just kind of like shifting it. I just have the space. Then this kind of like plays it in reverse. And then I added this little extra atonal thing to make it a little more creepy. Yeah. Some honorable mentions. The Raga Bleep. And yeah, that's your Raga Bleep. And then one of my favorite patches here actually is this Doppler Roulette. And this one is inspired by a Reactor ensemble I found via Culprate when we worked together. And it just kind of creates a bunch of Doppler effects. And this is the kind of patch that you want to make sure that you're recording, albeit the M recorder or rolling sampler, because it's not going to repeat, or the likelihood of it is pretty slim. So, every time you trigger it, it just goes. That's compiled of all these curves. And there's no samples. This is all just like envelopes, noise, and sine. So I really like that a lot. Fun fact about Kilohearts or faceplant, I'm pretty sure it is used a lot in, it's used in procedural game audio, or it's I don't know the terminology exactly, but yeah, the cool thing about the Kilohearts just ecosystem, it works really well with across the board. And if you guys know a guy called Motorcycle Joe, he is, I think it's Motorcycle Joe. He's the guy on Twitter, or just the guy who kind of posts all of those realistic sounds. I imagine he uses some form of Carplus synthesis, where he just replicates real instruments, and that's what you can do with this. So if you're making a video game and you kind of want to map the mechanics of whatever object that needs some sound, I'm pretty sure this is what's good for it. And I've noticed them at like just sound design conventions, which I didn't know existed. But yeah, that goes over my favorite patches. Up next, I'm gonna be going over some, well, the next video is going to be a breakdown of the demo track. So stay tuned for part 2. Cheers.